Jacob Mercer dropped to his knees in the snow. The child weighed nothing. Her fingers were black with frostbite, her dress torn at the shoulder, and blood-dried blood crusted along her hairline. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. "They beat me," she whispered. Her eyes found his. "Please, don't send me back." Jacob hadn't held a child since burying his son 4 years ago. He'd sworn he never would again. But this girl, this broken, frozen girl, she was still breathing. And someone had done this to her. He carried her inside. If this story touches your heart, subscribe to our channel and follow along until the very end. Drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this tale travels. The fire had burned low by the time Jacob got her warm. Martha Delgado, his housekeeper of 6 years, worked in silence. She'd seen plenty in her 55 years on the frontier, disease, violence, death in all its forms. But the marks on this child's arms made her hands shake as she wrapped them in clean cloth. "Señor Jacob," Martha said quietly, "these bruises, they are shaped like a belt buckle." Jacob stood by the window, watching the blizzard swallow the road. His jaw was tight, his fists tighter. "I see it. Who does this to a child? Someone who's going to answer for it." The girl stirred on the settee. Her eyes opened pale gray, too old for her face. She looked at the room, at the fire, at the two strangers watching her. She didn't scream, didn't cry, just pulled the blanket closer and waited. Jacob crossed the room slowly. He crouched down, keeping his hands visible. "What's your name?" "Grace." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Grace Brennan." "Grace, I'm Jacob. This is Martha. You're safe here." The girl studied him, calculating, measuring, like she'd learned the hard way that words meant nothing. "Are you going to send me back?" "Back where?" "To Uncle Silas." Her fingers tightened on the blanket. "He said if I ran again he'd lock me in the cellar. Said nobody would believe me anyway." Martha made a small sound in her throat. Jacob's expression didn't change, but something cold settled in his chest. "Your uncle did this to you?" Grace nodded. "Once. Quick. Like admitting it might make it worse." "How long you been living with him?" 2 months. Since Mama and Papa died." Her voice cracked on the last word. "Their wagon flipped, on the flat road near Miller's Creek. Papa always said that road was safe. He said—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "He said someone had been watching us, watching our land." Jacob felt the floor shift beneath him. He knew that road, knew it well. Flat as a table for 3 miles in every direction. A wagon didn't flip on that road unless someone made it flip. "Your uncle," Jacob said carefully. "What's his full name?" "Silas Whitmore." The name hit like a punch to the gut. Silas Whitmore, richest man in Thornton Creek. Owned the bank, half the businesses on Main Street, and enough politicians to write his own laws. Jacob had dealt with him twice, once over water rights, once over a land dispute. Both times Whitmore had smiled that oily smile and gotten exactly what he wanted. "He's your blood uncle." "Mama's brother." "But she never talked to him. Said he was—" Grace hesitated. "She said he was poisoned, dressed up in a nice suit." Martha brought soup. Grace ate like she hadn't seen food in days, probably hadn't. Her hands shook so badly she could barely hold the spoon. "Slow down," Martha said gently. "There's plenty more. He only fed me when I was good." Grace didn't look up. "I wasn't good very often." Jacob walked to the window again. The storm was getting worse. Good. It would buy them time. "Grace," he said without turning around. "Why did you come here? My ranch is 6 miles from town." "Mama told me about you once. Said you saved Papa's life in a mine collapse long time ago. Said if anything ever happened to them, I should find the man with the horse brand that looked like a J and an M together." She paused. "Said you were the only honest man she knew." Jacob closed his eyes. Thomas Brennan. He remembered now. 7 years ago, a tunnel collapse at the Morrison mine. Jacob had been passing through, heard the screaming, spent 4 hours digging through rubble with his bare hands. Pulled out 2 men alive. One of them had been young, scared, kept talking about his wife Rebecca and how they were going to have a baby soon. That baby was sitting in his house now, covered in bruises, orphaned by violence. "Your father," Jacob said quietly. "He was a good man. He was the best man." Grace's voice broke. "And somebody killed him. I know they did. Uncle Silas kept asking about papers, kept asking where Papa hid the deed. I told him I didn't know. That's when he—" She stopped, touched her hairline where the blood had dried. "That's when he hit you. He said I was lying, said Papa must have told me something, but Papa never talked about business with me. He just—" Her shoulders shook. "He just read me stories, taught me numbers, told me I was smart." Martha sat beside her, pulled her close. The girl stiffened at first, not used to gentle touch, then slowly, carefully leaned into the embrace. Jacob's mind was racing. Silas Whitmore wanted papers, a deed. The Brennan homestead sat on 300 acres of prime land that, if Jacob remembered correctly, bordered the proposed railroad route. Land that would be worth a fortune once the tracks came through. Thomas Brennan's wagon flipping on a flat road. Silas Whitmore suddenly becoming guardian. Papers that couldn't be found. It wasn't hard to connect the lines. 3 hard knocks on the front door. Martha's arms tightened around Grace. The girl went rigid, her face draining of color. "He found me," she whispered. "He found me. He found me. He—" "Hush." Jacob's voice was calm, steady. "Stay with Martha. Don't move." He crossed to the gun rack, pulled down his Winchester, checked the chamber. Walked to the door. Opened it just wide enough to see. Silas Whitmore stood on the porch. The man was 50, soft around the middle, wearing a wool coat that cost more than most cowboys made in a year. His face was red from cold, but his eyes, those flat, calculating eyes, were fixed on Jacob with something like amusement. Behind him stood Sheriff Dale Yates and 2 deputies. All 3 looked uncomfortable. All 3 had their hands near their holsters. "Evening, Mercer?" Whitmore smiled. That same oily smile. "Cold night to be harboring a runaway." "Evening, Whitmore. Cold night to be out hunting children." "Hunting." Whitmore laughed, a short, sharp sound. "That girl is my legal ward. Judge Crawford signed the papers himself. She ran off this afternoon during a disciplinary conversation. I'm here to bring her home." Disciplinary conversation. Jacob didn't move from the doorway. "That what you're calling it? Children need correction, Mercer. Surely you understand that. Or—" Whitmore's eyes flickered. "I suppose you wouldn't. Yours died before you could teach him much of anything." The words landed like a blade between the ribs. Jacob's grip tightened on the Winchester. For 1 heartbeat, 2, the world narrowed to the trigger beneath his finger and the smiling face in front of him. Then he breathed out. Slow. Controlled. "You've got some nerve, Whitmore." "I've got legal documentation. Sheriff Yates has seen it. Haven't you?" "Sheriff—" Yates stepped forward. His face was gray. "Papers look legal, Jacob. I'm sorry, but papers can lie." "Maybe, but I can't ignore a judge's signature." Yates wouldn't meet his eyes. "Whitmore's her legal guardian. Law says she goes back with him. Law says you can't beat a child bloody and call it discipline." Whitmore's smile didn't waver. "I don't know what the girl told you, but she's imaginative. Makes up stories. It's a symptom of her grief, poor thing. I've consulted doctors in Helena about her condition." "Condition?" Jacob's voice was flat. "She's got bruises shaped like your belt buckle. Self-inflicted, I'm afraid. She's a troubled child. Another reason she needs proper supervision." "Nobody believes that. Everyone who matters does." Whitmore pulled a document from his coat. I have here an affidavit from Dr. Marcus Webb attesting to her mental instability. I have Judge Crawford's guardianship order. And I have 3 witnesses who'll swear she attacked me this afternoon, forcing me to restrain her for her own safety. Jacob looked at the document. The signatures looked real. The seals looked real. But Judge Crawford was 72 years old and half blind. Anyone could have guided his hand. I want 72 hours, Jacob said. Time to verify these documents with the territorial office. Denied. Whitmore's smile vanished. The law is clear. She comes with me tonight. She's not going anywhere. Sheriff Yates stepped closer. His hand rested on his pistol now. Jacob, don't make this harder than it needs to be. How much does he own you, Dale? Yates flinched. That's not... How much your gambling debts, that loan for your wife's surgery? What's the number? The sheriff's face went red, then white. He didn't answer. I'm giving you one chance. Jacob's voice dropped to a growl. Walk away. Come back in 3 days with federal papers. Give me time to prove what he did. I don't need federal papers. Whitmore's voice was silk over steel. I have everything I need right here. Sheriff Yates, do your duty. Yates drew his pistol. His hand was shaking. Jacob, please. Step aside. Jacob didn't move. The Winchester was still pointed at the floor, but his stance was balanced. Ready. You pull that trigger. Dale, you better make the first shot count, because I promise you won't get a second. The silence stretched. The wind screamed around the corners of the house. Snow swirled between them, thick and white and blinding. This is absurd. Whitmore stepped forward, reaching for the door. Move aside, Mercer. The girl is mine by law. Jacob's arm shot out, slammed against Whitmore's chest, shoved him back into the snow. Whitmore fell hard. His coat splayed around him, his fancy hat tumbled into a drift. For one moment his face showed something raw, shock maybe, or fear. Then the mask slid back into place, and when he stood, his voice was cold as the wind. Assault. You all witnessed it. He brushed snow from his sleeves. Sheriff, I want this man arrested. Yates looked at Jacob, looked at Whitmore, looked at the 2 deputies who were both finding reasons to study the ground. I didn't see anything, Yates said slowly. What? It's dark. Snowing hard. Must have slipped. Whitmore's face purpled. You work for me, Yates. I work for the law, and right now the law says a man's got a right to defend his home. Yates holstered his pistol. We'll come back in 3 days, Jacob, with proper federal documentation. Until then, the girl stays where she is. You can't do this. I just did. Yates turned, walked back to his horse. The deputies followed without a word. Whitmore stood alone on the porch. The snow was settling on his shoulders, melting against his expensive coat. His eyes never left Jacob's face. 3 days, he said softly. You think 3 days will save her? I own this county, Mercer. I own the bank, the newspaper, the telegraph office. By tomorrow morning, every person in Thornton Creek will know you're a kidnapper. A dangerous man. Maybe even worse. Get off my property. Enjoy your 72 hours. When they're up, I'm bringing federal marshals. And I'm not just taking the girl, I'm taking your ranch, your reputation, and everything you've ever built. He smiled. Unless you want to negotiate now. Make this easier on everyone. What do you want? The Brennan deed. Thomas hid it somewhere. The girl knows where. Give me the deed, and I'll sign guardianship over to you. No questions asked. Everyone wins. Jacob stared at him. This man who beat children, who murdered families for land, who stood in the snow making deals like human lives were just another entry in his ledger. Get off my property, Jacob repeated. If I see you here again before those 3 days are up, I'll shoot you where you stand. Whitmore laughed. Actually laughed. You're not a killer, Mercer. That's your weakness. You care about things like justice and fairness and doing right. He mounted his horse, gathered the reins. Those things don't exist. Not out here. Not anywhere. There's only power, and who holds it? He rode into the storm. Within seconds, the blizzard swallowed him whole. Jacob stood on the porch until his fingers went numb. Then he went back inside, bolted the door, and leaned the Winchester against the wall. Grace was watching him from the settee. Martha still held her, but the girl's eyes were fixed on Jacob with an intensity that made his chest tight. "He's going to come back," Grace said. Not a question. "Yes. He's going to hurt you, because of me. He's going to try. Why?" Her voice cracked. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Jacob crossed the room, knelt down in front of her. For a long moment, he just looked at her. This broken child who'd walked 6 miles through a blizzard to find a stranger she'd only heard about in her mother's stories. "Because your father saved my life once," he said, "in a mine shaft that should have been his grave. He talked about you the whole time I was digging, said he was going to have a daughter soon, said he couldn't wait to teach her numbers and read her stories and show her the whole wide world." Grace's eyes filled with tears, the first tears she'd shed since arriving. "He kept his promise," Jacob continued. "And now I'm going to keep mine." "What promise?" "The one I just made." He reached out slowly and put his hand on her shoulder. "Nobody's going to hurt you again. Not while I'm breathing." Grace stared at him, searching, testing, looking for the lie that adults always hid behind their kind words. She didn't find it. "Okay," she whispered. Then quieter. "Okay." Martha helped her upstairs to the guest room. Jacob stayed by the fire thinking. 72 hours. 3 days to prove that Silas Whitmore had murdered Thomas and Rebecca Brennan. 3 days to find a deed that might not even exist. 3 days before federal marshals arrived and took Grace back to a man who would kill her the moment she stopped being useful. He needed help. Legal help. Someone who understood documents and forgeries and the twisted way powerful men bent the law to their will. He needed Ellie Chen. The next morning, Jacob rode into town before dawn. The snow had stopped leaving drifts 3 feet deep along the main road. His horse picked its way carefully, breath steaming in the frozen air. Thornton Creek was quiet. Too quiet. The usual early morning bustle, shopkeepers, sweeping boardwalks, ranch hands loading supplies, was absent. Instead, people hurried past with their heads down, avoiding eye contact. Jacob tied his horse outside Chen's dry goods and stepped inside. Ellie was behind the counter measuring fabric for no one. Her black hair was pinned tight, her face carefully blank. But when she saw him, something flickered in her eyes. Warning. "Mr. Mercer." Her voice was formal, stiff. "What brings you in so early?" Jacob glanced around. The shop was empty, but that didn't mean anything. Whitmore had ears everywhere. "Need some supplies?" he said loudly. Then quieter, "And some advice." Ellie's hands stilled on the fabric. She tilted her head slightly toward the back room. "I have some special stock in back, if you'd like to see it." He followed her through the curtain. The back room was cramped, filled with bolts of fabric and stacked crates. She closed the curtain behind them and turned to face him. "You have to leave," she said immediately. "Take the girl and go, tonight." "Can't. Whitmore will have men watching the roads by now." "Then you're both dead." Her voice was flat, matter of fact. "He came to the bank yesterday, deposited $15,000, asked Benjamin Price to witness some documents. I saw the names on them." "What names?" "Thomas Brennan, Rebecca Brennan. Sale agreements dated 3 days after their deaths." She met his eyes. "He's been planning this for months, Jacob. The wagon accident, the guardianship papers, the land grab. All of it." "I know. Do you know what else I found?" She pulled a folded paper from her apron. "This. I copied it last night from his personal files at the bank." Jacob unfolded it. A loan application signed by Thomas Brennan, pledging his homestead as collateral for $8,000. "Thomas never took out a loan," Jacob said. "I know. The signature's forged. I compared it to his actual handwriting from a deposit slip last year. The letter formations are wrong, but it's good enough to fool a judge. Good enough to seize the property if the loan defaults. And with Thomas dead, the loan defaults automatically. Whitmore gets the land. All legal, all documented. Ellie's voice was bitter. This is what he does, what he's been doing for years. 6 families have lost their homesteads since he came to Thornton Creek. 6 wagon accidents. 6 convenient deaths. Jacob felt the cold settle deeper into his bones. Why hasn't anyone stopped him? Who's going to stop him? He owns the sheriff. He owns the judge. He owns half the town council. She shook her head. And anyone who speaks against him, they have accidents too. You're speaking against him now. I'm Chinese. I'm already living on borrowed time. Her smile was thin, humorless. The Exclusion Act means I can't vote, can't testify in court, can't do anything that matters. But I can still see, still remember, and someday someone's going to use what I know. Today, Jacob said. Use it today. Ellie stared at him. You're serious. The girl's parents hid the original deed somewhere. She doesn't know where, but her father told her about a watch, a pocket watch her mother gave him on their wedding day. He said if anything ever happened, she should find the watch. Where is it? I don't know. But if Thomas was smart, and he was, he would have put it somewhere safe, somewhere Whitmore wouldn't think to look. Ellie was quiet for a long moment. Then she moved to a cabinet in the corner, unlocked it, and pulled out a leather folder. I've been collecting these for 3 years, she said. Every suspicious transaction, every forged signature, every discrepancy in Whitmore's accounts. It's not enough to convict him, not without a witness willing to testify, but it might be enough to buy you time. She handed him the folder. There's a man in Helena, federal prosecutor named William Harding. He's been investigating railroad land fraud for 2 years. Whitmore's name has come up before. If you can get this to him, Helena's 200 miles away. Then you'd better ride fast. Jacob took the folder, felt its weight. 3 years of evidence gathered by a woman who had no legal standing, no protection, no reason to risk her life, except the simple belief that right should triumph over wrong. Why are you helping me? He asked. Ellie's expression softened slightly. Because I watched my husband die in a railroad tunnel collapse. Because the company paid us nothing, called it an accident, moved on to the next project. Because I know what it feels like to be crushed by powerful men and have nobody listen. She straightened. And because that little girl deserves better than to be another name in Whitmore's ledger. Jacob tucked the folder inside his coat. I'll get this to Helena, somehow. You have 60 hours now, less if Whitmore decides not to wait. Then I'd better not waste them. He turned to leave, stopped at the curtain. Ellie, if this goes wrong, I know the risks. If it goes wrong, get out. Don't try to save the evidence, don't try to be brave, just disappear. Head to San Francisco, find the Chinese community there. They'll protect you. Ellie smiled, a real smile this time. I've been disappearing my whole life, Jacob. It's the one thing this country has taught me to do well. He left through the back door, circled around to his horse, rode out of town the long way to avoid the main street. The sun was climbing now, burning off the morning haze. By noon it would be warm enough to melt the top layer of snow. By nightfall, it would freeze again, turning roads into sheets of ice. 60 hours. 200 miles to Helena. A child's life hanging in the balance. Jacob had faced long odds before, but not like this. Never like this. He pushed his horse faster. Back at the ranch, Grace stood at the window watching the road. Martha had tried to get her to eat breakfast, but the girl had refused. Said she couldn't eat until Jacob came back. He will return, Martha said. He is a man of his word. Mama said that about Papa, too. Grace's voice was hollow. Right before he didn't come back. Martha set down the plate she was holding, walked to the window, stood beside the girl. When I was young, Martha said slowly, in Mexico my village was attacked by bandits. They killed my father, took my brother, I was 8 years old, same as you. Grace didn't turn, but her shoulders stiffened. I ran into the desert, walked for 3 days, no food, no water. I thought I was going to die. Martha's voice was quiet, steady. Then I found a mission, an old priest named Father Antonio. He gave me shelter, taught me to read, told me that God had saved me for a reason. What reason? I didn't know for many years, but now... Martha put her hand on Grace's shoulder. Now I think maybe I was saved so I could be here, in this moment, for you. Grace finally turned. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but dry. Do you believe that things happen for a reason? I believe that good people exist, and sometimes when the world is very dark, they find us. Martha squeezed her shoulder. Jacob is a good man. He will fight for you. Even if he loses, especially if he might lose, that is when fighting matters most. Grace was silent for a long moment. Then quietly, I want to help. I don't want to just wait. What can you do? I can remember. Papa talked about the watch, about where he hid things. I wasn't listening. I was playing with my dolls. I wasn't paying attention, but maybe if I think hard enough. Then think. Martha guided her to a chair. Close your eyes. Go back to that day. What did you see? What did you hear? Grace closed her eyes. Papa was in his office, the little room behind the kitchen. He was writing something. Mama came in, asked what he was doing. He said... She frowned, concentrating. He said he was making sure we were protected, in case something happened. Go on. Mama laughed, said nothing was going to happen. Papa said... Grace's breath caught. Papa said Silas was asking questions about the railroad, about how much the land would be worth. He said Silas had that look in his eyes, the hungry look. What did your father do with the paper he was writing? He folded it, put it in the watch, Mama's wedding watch, the one with the golden oak tree on the case. Grace's eyes flew open. He put the paper inside the watch, said it was our insurance policy. Where is the watch now? I don't know. He always carried it. But after the accident... Her face crumpled. Uncle Silas took everything, went through all their things. He didn't find the watch, though. He kept asking me where it was. That's why he... She touched her hairline, the wound that was just starting to heal. He didn't find it, Martha said carefully. So where did your father hide it? Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly, Mama's grave. The day of the funeral, I saw him put something in the ground beside her coffin. I thought it was just dirt, but... Her eyes widened. It was the watch. He buried it with her. The wind picked up outside, rattling the windows. Somewhere in the distance, a horse whinnied. Martha stood. Stay here. Lock the door behind me. Do not open it for anyone except me or Jacob. Where are you going? To find a shovel. Grace grabbed her arm. You can't. The cemetery is 3 miles away. And Uncle Silas, he'll have people watching. Then I will be careful. Martha's face was set, determined. That watch is the only proof your father was murdered. The only thing that can save you and Mr. Jacob. And I did not survive bandits and deserts and 55 years on this earth to let a soft man in a fancy coat win. She put on her coat, grabbed a lantern, walked to the door. Stay hidden. Stay quiet. I will be back before dark. Martha. The older woman turned. Thank you, Grace whispered, for believing me. Martha's stern face softened. Thank you, Pequeña, for being worth believing in. She stepped out into the cold. The door closed. Grace was alone. Martha made it halfway to the cemetery before she saw them. 2 riders on the ridge silhouettes against the gray winter sky. They weren't moving, just watching, waiting. She pulled her horse behind a stand of bare cottonwoods and held her breath. Come on, old girl, she whispered to the mare. Quiet now. The riders didn't move for a full minute. Then one of them pointed toward the main road, and they both turned their horses east away from her position. Martha waited until they disappeared over the ridge. Then she urged her horse forward, taking the long way around through the frozen creek bed where hoofprints would be harder to track. The cemetery sat on a hill overlooking Thornton Creek. 37 graves, most of them from the fever outbreak of '79. Thomas and Rebecca Brennan were buried near the back under a young oak tree that wouldn't provide shade for another 20 years. Martha tied her horse to the fence and grabbed the shovel. The ground was frozen. Each strike of the blade sent shockwaves up her arms, rattled her teeth. She was too old for this. Her back screamed, her hands blistered inside her gloves. She kept digging. "Forgive me," she muttered to the grave. "Forgive me for disturbing your rest. But your daughter needs what you buried here." The shovel hit something solid. Martha dropped to her knees, brushed away the frozen dirt with her bare hands. There, wrapped in oilcloth, was a pocket watch. Golden case slightly tarnished. An oak tree engraved on the cover. She opened it. Inside, folded tight, was a piece of paper. She couldn't read it. The light was too dim, her eyes too old, but she could feel the weight of it. The weight of truth. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, Thomas." She was wrapping the watch in her scarf when she heard the click of a pistol being cocked. "Don't move." Martha froze. "Hands where I can see them. Slow." She raised her hands, still clutching the watch, turned slowly. A man stood 10 feet away. Young, maybe 25. Hired gun by the look of him. He wore Whitmore's brand on his hat, a coiled snake silver against black felt. "Well, well," the man smiled. "The Mexican housekeeper grave robbing. Mr. Whitmore will be real interested in this. This belongs to the child. Everything in this county belongs to Mr. Whitmore, including whatever you're holding." He gestured with the pistol. "Hand it over." Martha's mind raced. If she gave him the watch, Grace was lost. Jacob was lost. Everything was lost. "I said hand it over." Martha looked at the pistol. Looked at the man's eyes. Saw the uncertainty there. He was young, probably hadn't killed anyone yet. Probably didn't want to start with an old woman in a cemetery. She made her decision. Catch. She threw the watch not at him, but past him into the open grave she'd just dug. The man's eyes followed it instinctively. Just for a second. Martha ran. She heard him curse, heard his boots scrambling in the frozen dirt as he went after the watch instead of her. She reached her horse, grabbed the saddle horn, pulled herself up with strength she didn't know she had. "Go! Go!" The mare bolted. Behind her, the man was climbing out of the grave watch in hand, raising his pistol. Martha heard the shot, felt the wind of the bullet pass her ear, but she was already over the ridge, already flying down the slope toward the creek bed. She'd lost the watch, but she was alive, and she'd seen what was written on that paper just for a second in the moment before she threw it. Last will and testament. Thomas Brennan had written a will, and he'd named a guardian, not Silas Whitmore, Jacob Mercer. Back at the ranch, Grace heard the gunshot. She ran to the window, heart pounding. The sound had come from the direction of the cemetery, Martha's direction. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She grabbed the rifle Jacob had left by the door. It was too heavy for her too long, but she'd watched her father shoot enough times to know how it worked. She checked the chamber the way he'd taught her. Full. The front door rattled. Grace spun around, rifle raised. "Who's there?" "Grace." "Grace, it's me. Open the door." She recognized the voice. Sheriff Yates. "I can't. Jacob said not to open it for anyone." "Grace, please. I'm trying to help you. Whitmore's men are coming. You need to get out of here." "How do I know this isn't a trick?" Silence. Then quietly, "You don't. But I'm asking you to trust me anyway. Grace's hands shook on the rifle. She was 8 years old. She didn't know who to trust anymore. Her uncle had smiled at her while he beat her. The doctor had called her crazy while she screamed the truth. Every adult in her life had failed her except Jacob and Martha. And now Martha might be dead. Grace. The sheriff's voice was different now, strained. There are 4 men riding toward this ranch right now. They're not coming to arrest anyone. They're coming to make sure you never testify against Whitmore. Do you understand what I'm saying? Grace understood. She'd understood since the moment her parents' wagon flipped on that flat, safe road. Why should I believe you? Because I have a daughter. Had a daughter. His voice cracked. She died when she was 9. Fever took her. And every day since I've wondered what I would have done to save her, what lines I would have crossed. Grace lowered the rifle slightly. Whitmore owns me, the sheriff continued. I owe him money I can't pay. He's used that debt to make me do things I'm ashamed of. But this? He took a breath. I won't help him murder a child. I can't. Whatever's left of my soul won't survive it. Grace walked to the door, put her hand on the bolt. If you're lying, she said, I'll shoot you. Fair enough. She opened the door. Sheriff Yates stood on the porch, hat in hands. His face was gray, his eyes red-rimmed. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. Behind him, his horse stamped nervously in the snow. We need to go, now. There's a cabin up in the mountains, old mining claim. Nobody knows about it except me. I can hide you there until Jacob gets back. What about Martha? Yates hesitated. I don't know. I heard a shot from the cemetery. Could have been anything. It wasn't anything. Someone shot at her. Then we need to move even faster. Come on. Grace grabbed her coat, stuffed the rifle under her arm, and followed him to the horse. He lifted her into the saddle, climbed up behind her. Hold on tight. They rode hard. 20 miles away, Jacob pushed his horse to its limits. The road to Helena was treacherous in winter. Ice patches hidden under fresh snow. Drifts that could swallow a horse to its chest. He'd already lost 2 hours digging out of one such drift, and the sun was starting to set. He had 40 hours left. Not enough. Not nearly enough. He was passing through a narrow canyon when he saw the roadblock. 3 men on horseback spread across the path, all armed, all wearing Whitmore's snake brand. Jacob reined in his horse. Evening, gentlemen. The lead rider was big, barrel-chested, with a scar that ran from his eyebrow to his chin. He smiled, showing teeth that had seen better days. Jacob Mercer. Mr. Whitmore said you might be heading this direction. Mr. Whitmore says a lot of things. He also said we should discourage you from continuing, strongly. Jacob's hand rested on his thigh 6 inches from his holster. How strongly? Depends on how smart you are. The scarred man gestured at the folder tucked into Jacob's saddlebag. That wouldn't happen to be evidence you're planning to deliver somewhere, would it? Just some personal papers. Mind if we take a look? Yes. The scarred man's smile faded. Wasn't really a question, Mercer. Jacob calculated the odds. 3 against 1. They had the high ground. He was exhausted, his horse was tired, and even if he managed to shoot all 3, there was no guarantee he wouldn't take a bullet in the process. Tell you what, Jacob said slowly. I'll make you a deal. We're listening. You let me pass, and I don't tell the federal prosecutor in Helena about the 6 homesteaders Whitmore murdered. The ones whose signatures he forged. The ones whose land he stole. The scarred man's expression flickered. That's a serious accusation. I've got serious evidence. Enough to hang Whitmore and everyone who worked for him. Jacob met his eyes. That includes you, friend. Silence stretched between them. The wind howled through the canyon, kicking up snow devils that danced across the road. You're bluffing, the scarred man said finally. If you had that kind of evidence, you'd have used it already. Maybe I was waiting for the right moment. Maybe that moment's now. Or maybe you're a desperate man with nothing left to lose trying to talk his way out of a bad situation. Jacob smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Only one way to find out. The scarred man studied him for a long moment. Then he turned to his companions. Kill him. Jacob drew. His first shot took the scarred man in the shoulder, spinning him off his horse. His second caught one of the others in the leg. The third man fired back. Jacob felt the bullet tear through his coat sleeve, missing flesh by inches, and then Jacob's horse was bolting, carrying him through the gap between the fallen riders. He rode hard, not looking back. Gunshots cracked behind him, but the range was too far now, the light too dim. He was through the canyon and into open country before they could regroup. Blood trickled down his arm. The bullet had grazed him after all, not deep, but enough to hurt. He tied it off with his bandana and kept riding. 38 hours left. And now Whitmore knew exactly where he was headed. Martha reached the ranch at nightfall. The house was dark, empty. The door stood open, swinging in the wind. Grace. She dismounted, drew the small pistol she kept in her boot. Grace, are you here? Silence. She moved through the house, checking every room. The girl's coat was gone. The rifle was gone. But there was no sign of struggle, no blood, no broken furniture. Someone had taken her, or she'd left willingly. Martha found the note on the kitchen table. Hasty handwriting, barely legible. Took her to Miller's cabin. Whitmore's men coming. Stay hidden. Yates, Sheriff Yates. The man who'd stood on the porch with Whitmore 2 days ago. The man who'd almost arrested Jacob. Martha didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. She pocketed the note and went to saddle a fresh horse. Miller's cabin was in the mountains, a good 3 hours' ride in daylight. In the dark through fresh snow, it would take twice that. She was halfway to the barn when she heard the hoofbeats. 3 riders coming fast from the east. Martha ran for the house, but she knew she wouldn't make it in time. The riders were too close too fast. She ducked behind the water trough instead, made herself small, pressed herself into the frozen mud. The riders pulled up in the yard. She recognized Whitmore's voice immediately. Search the house. Find the girl. Sir, the place looks empty. Then search it anyway, and check the barn. The housekeeper's horse is here. She can't have gone far. Martha held her breath. Footsteps approached the water trough. Stopped. Sir, there's tracks here. Fresh. Someone was just... Martha burst from cover, pistol raised. Her first shot went wide. Her second caught one of the men in the arm. The third, Whitmore's cane, caught her across the face. She fell. The world spun dark and bright and red around the edges. She felt hands grab her arms, haul her upright. Whitmore stood in front of her, his face twisted with rage. Where is she? Martha spat blood. Go to hell. He hit her again, this time with his fist. I asked you a question. Where is the girl? I don't know. You're lying. He grabbed her chin, forced her to look at him. My man at the cemetery told me what you found. The watch, the will. You know where she is. You were probably planning to bring her the evidence yourself. I lost the watch. Your man took it. Yes, he did. And I've read what was inside. Whitmore's smile was ugly. Thomas Brennan named Jacob Mercer as his daughter's guardian. A touching gesture, really, but ultimately meaningless. Because once the girl is dead, there won't be anyone left to contest my claim. Martha's blood ran cold. You can't. I can do whatever I want. I own this county. I own the law. And soon, I'll own every acre of land along that railroad route. He released her chin. Now, one more time. Where is the girl? Martha looked at him. This soft, cruel man in his expensive coat. This murderer who smiled while he destroyed families. I told you, she said quietly. Go to hell. Whitmore sighed. Very well. He turned to his men. Take her to the cellar. Make her comfortable. I'm sure she'll be more cooperative once she's had time to think." They dragged her away. In the mountains, Grace shivered by a small fire. Sheriff Yates had found the cabin easily enough, a one-room structure half collapsed, but with enough roof to keep out the snow. He'd started a fire, given her his coat, sat across from her with his pistol in his lap. "How long do we wait?" Grace asked. "Until Jacob comes back. Or until I figure out another way to get you out of the territory." "What if he doesn't come back?" Yates was quiet for a moment. "Then I'll take you myself. California, maybe. Or up to Canada. Somewhere Whitmore's reach doesn't extend." "Why are you doing this? Really?" The sheriff stared into the fire. His face looked older than his years, worn down by compromises and regrets. "I told you about my daughter. You said she died of fever. That's what I tell people." He took a breath. "The truth is, she drowned. Swimming hole outside of town. I was supposed to be watching her, but I'd been drinking. Gambling. I turned away for 1 minute, and when I looked back..." He stopped. Swallowed hard. "Whitmore found out. He always finds out. He offered to pay off my debts. Keep the truth about Sophie quiet. All I had to do was look the other way now and then. Small things at first, then bigger things. Then children," Grace said quietly. "I never heard any of them. I swear to God I never..." "You let it happen. That's the same thing." Yates flinched like she'd slapped him. "You're right," he said finally. "It is, and I'll answer for it someday. But not tonight. Tonight I'm going to do one right thing. I'm going to keep you alive until Jacob Mercer can prove what Whitmore did." Grace pulled his coat tighter around her shoulders. "Do you think he can prove it? I mean..." "I don't know, but if anyone can, it's him. He's the stubbornest man I've ever met. Once he sets his mind to something, he doesn't stop. Not for anything." "That's what Mama used to say about Papa." "Your father was a good man. Everyone in town knew it. And when he died..." Yates shook his head. I knew it wasn't an accident. But I was too afraid to say anything. Too deep in Whitmore's pocket." "You're saying something now. Now it's my last chance." He met her eyes. "If I don't stop him this time, he'll kill you. And then he'll kill Jacob, and Martha, and anyone else who ever tried to help you. And I'll have to live with that for the rest of my miserable life." Grace thought about that. About the weight of guilt, the crushing pressure of things done and undone. "My papa used to say that it's never too late to do the right thing," she said finally. "He said redemption wasn't about erasing what you've done, it's about making sure you don't do it again." Yates stared at her. "You're 8 years old." "I grew up fast." A bitter laugh escaped him. "Yeah, I guess you did." The fire crackled between them. Outside, the wind howled through the mountains, carrying snow and secrets, and the distant sound of hoofbeats. Yates stood. "Someone's coming." Grace was on her feet, instantly reaching for the rifle. "How many?" "I don't know. Stay back. Behind the woodpile. If anything happens to me, there's a trail out the back, follows the creek north for about a mile, then cuts west toward the main road. You understand? I'm not leaving you. You're not dying here either. Not after everything we've gone through." He moved to the window, peered through a crack in the boards. "2 riders. Can't see their faces." The hoofbeats stopped. A voice called out from the darkness. "Yates! You in there?" The sheriff's shoulders sagged with relief. "That's Tom Pritchard, rancher from north of town. He's friendly." He opened the door. Tom Pritchard stood in the snow, an old man with a face like weathered leather. Beside him was a younger man Grace didn't recognize. "We've been looking for you," Pritchard said. "Whitmore's got men all over the territory. He's offering $1,000 for anyone who brings in the girl." $1,000. Yates whistled. "That's serious money. Serious enough that half the town is out searching. The other half is pretending they don't know anything." Pritchard's eyes found Grace behind the sheriff. "That her?" "That's her." "Good. We need to move. Whitmore captured the housekeeper, the Mexican woman. He's got her at the bank in the basement. Word is, he's going to make an example of her in the morning if the girl doesn't turn herself in. Grace's heart stopped. Martha. He has Martha. Afraid so. Then I have to. You have to stay hidden, Yates said sharply. Whitmore will kill you the second you show your face. Martha knew that when she went to the cemetery. She made her choice. I won't let her die for me. You don't have a choice. Yes, I do. Grace stepped forward, her small face set with determination. Take me to town. I'll turn myself in. Absolutely not. You said you wanted redemption. You said you wanted to do the right thing. She looked up at him, her gray eyes steady. This is the right thing. We trade me for Martha. Then we figure out how to escape together. That's suicide. Maybe, but it's my suicide, my choice. She took a breath. My parents died because Whitmore wanted something they wouldn't give him. I won't let Martha die the same way. I won't let anyone else die because of me. Pritchard and the other man exchanged glances. Kid's got more guts than half the men in this county, Pritchard muttered. Yates crouched down to Grace's level. His eyes were bright with something fear maybe, or respect. You're sure about this? I'm sure. It might not work. Whitmore might kill you both. Then at least I'll die trying to save someone, instead of hiding while everyone else fights my battles. The sheriff was silent for a long moment. Then he stood. All right, we do this your way. But we do it smart. He turned to Pritchard. How many men can you gather by dawn? Maybe 10, 12 if we ride hard. That's not enough. It's what we've got. Yates nodded slowly. Then we'll have to make it enough. Here's the plan. 40 miles away, Jacob finally stopped running. His horse was spent foam flecking its mouth legs trembling. He'd pushed it too hard too far. Any further, and he'd kill it and himself with it. He found shelter in an abandoned line shack, built a small fire, dressed his wound properly. The graze was shallow but painful. He'd survive. 30 hours left. He looked at the folder Ellie had given him. 3 years of evidence, enough to bring down Whitmore if he could get it to the right people. But Helena was still 100 miles away. His horse was exhausted, and Whitmore's men would be waiting at every major road between here and the capital. He needed another way. Then he remembered. The telegraph office in Miller's Junction. Small town, barely 50 people, but they had a telegraph line that connected to Helena Butte and all points east. If he could get there, he could wire ahead, alert the federal prosecutor, maybe even get troops dispatched. Miller's Junction was 20 miles north, through rough country but passable. Jacob stood. His body screamed in protest. He hadn't slept in 2 days, hadn't eaten in longer, but he forced himself to move. Come on, he said to his horse. One more push. Then you can rest. The horse looked at him with exhausted eyes. I know. But there's a little girl counting on us, and I made her a promise. He mounted up and rode into the night. At the bank in Thornton Creek, Martha sat in the darkness and waited. They'd thrown her in the basement, a windowless room that had once been a vault before Whitmore built a bigger one upstairs. The walls were stone, the floor was dirt, and the only light came from a small lamp they'd left burning in the corner. Her face throbbed where Whitmore had hit her. Her wrists were raw from the ropes binding her hands. But she wasn't afraid. She'd lived too long to be afraid of dying. What scared her was the thought of Grace alone in the wilderness with no one to protect her. The thought of Jacob riding into a trap he didn't see coming. The thought of evil winning again, because good people weren't strong enough to stop it. God, she murmured, I don't ask for much. You know that. But please, if you're listening, protect that child. She's lost so much already. Don't let her lose any more. The basement door opened. Whitmore descended the stairs, lamp in hand. He wore a silk dressing gown over his clothes like he'd been dragged from bed. His face was tight with anger. Good news, he said. The girl has agreed to turn herself in. She'll be here by dawn. Martha's heart sank. No. Yes. Apparently she'd rather die than let you suffer for her sake. Touching, really. Stupid but touching. Please, let her go. She's just a child. A child who can identify me as a murderer. A child whose testimony could destroy everything I've built. Whitmore crouched in front of her, his face close enough that she could smell the brandy on his breath. Do you think I wanted this? Thomas Brennan could have sold me that land. He could have taken my money and moved somewhere else, started over. But he was stubborn, proud. He chose to fight me. He chose to protect his family. He chose wrong. Whitmore stood. Just like you chose wrong when you dug up that watch. Just like Jacob Mercer chose wrong when he took in that girl. Everyone who opposes me chooses wrong. That's the pattern. And what happens when you run out of people to oppose you? Whitmore smiled. Then I win. That's how this works. That's how it's always worked. He walked to the stairs. Get some sleep, Mrs. Delgado. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. The door closed. Martha sat in the darkness and prayed. Dawn broke gray and cold. Grace rode into Thornton Creek with Sheriff Yates on one side and Tom Pritchard on the other. Behind them, 10 ranchers followed in a loose formation, men who'd lost family to Whitmore's schemes. Men who'd stayed silent too long, men who were finally ready to fight. The town was waiting. Whitmore stood on the steps of the bank, flanked by a dozen armed men. His snake-brand cufflinks gleamed in the early light. His smile was triumphant. Sheriff Yates, I see you've come to your senses. Yates dismounted, helped Grace down from the horse. I've brought the girl. Now release Martha Delgado. Of course, a deal is a deal. Whitmore gestured, and one of his men disappeared inside the bank. A moment later, he returned with Martha, bruised, limping, but alive. Grace ran to her. Martha, Martha. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Hush, pequeña. Martha wrapped her arms around the girl. You should not have come. You should have stayed hidden. I couldn't let him hurt you. Some things are worth more than one old woman's life. You're worth everything to me. Whitmore clapped his hands. The sound echoed across the silent street. How touching. Now, if you don't mind. He gestured to his men. Take the girl. 2 men stepped forward. Yates drew his pistol. Not yet, he said quietly. Whitmore's smile faltered. I beg your pardon? I said not yet. We made a deal, the girl for Martha. You've got Martha. Now we negotiate the girl's terms. There are no terms. The girl is my legal ward. The girl is a witness to murder, your murder. And these men, Yates gestured at the ranchers behind him, are here to make sure she lives long enough to testify. The street went still. Whitmore's eyes swept the crowd, the ranchers with their rifles, the townspeople watching from windows and doorways, the tension crackling in the frozen air. You're outnumbered, Yates. You know that. Maybe, but how many of your men are willing to die for you? How many of them are willing to shoot a little girl in front of the whole town? Yates took a step forward. Because that's what this is going to take. You want Grace Brennan, you're going to have to kill her in broad daylight with witnesses. And then, you're going to have to kill everyone who saw it. Whitmore's face twisted. You think I won't? I think you're a coward who hides behind paperwork and hired guns. I think you've never gotten your own hands dirty in your life. Yates's voice dropped. And I think you're running out of time. What do you mean? Jacob Mercer reached Miller's Junction 2 hours ago. He wired Helena. Federal marshals are on their way. Yates smiled a cold, hard smile. Your empire is falling, Whitmore. The only question is, how many people you want to take down with you? For one long moment, nobody moved. Then Whitmore laughed. Federal marshals, of course. He turned to his men. Kill them. Kill them all. The first shot rang out, and everything exploded into chaos. The bullet caught Tom Pritchard in the shoulder, spinning him into the snow. Grace screamed. Martha grabbed her, pulled her down behind a water trough as gunfire erupted from every direction. The ranchers scattered, taking cover behind wagons and storefronts, returning fire at Whitmore's men. Sheriff Yates stood in the middle of the street, pistol raised, firing with deadly precision. "Get her out of here!" he shouted at Martha. "Back alley behind the general store. Go!" Martha half-carried, half-dragged Grace through the chaos. Bullets whined past their heads. A window shattered above them, raining glass. Someone screamed, one of Whitmore's men, clutching his leg, falling from the bank steps. "Don't look," Martha said. "Just run." They reached the alley. Martha pressed Grace against the wall, shielding her with her own body. "Stay here. Don't move." "Where are you going?" "To help. The men need—" A shadow fell across the alley entrance. Martha turned. Silas Whitmore stood there, pistol in hand, his fine coat splattered with mud and something darker. His face was twisted with rage. "Did you think you could escape me?" His voice was barely human. "Did you think any of you could escape?" Martha stepped in front of Grace. "You'll have to kill me first." "With pleasure." He raised the pistol. Grace moved faster than thought. She grabbed a broken board from the ground and swung it with all her strength, catching Whitmore across the knee. He screamed, stumbled, and his shot went wild, striking the wall inches from Martha's head. Martha didn't hesitate. She threw herself at Whitmore, knocked the pistol from his hand, and drove her elbow into his throat. He fell. "Run!" Martha shouted. "Run! Grace, find the sheriff. I won't leave you." "You will. You will because I'm telling you to." Martha pinned Whitmore down, her knee on his chest, her hands around his throat. "Go now." Grace ran. The main street was chaos. Bodies on the ground, some moving, some not. Smoke from gunpowder hung in the air, burning her eyes, filling her lungs. She couldn't tell who was winning. She saw Sheriff Yates crouched behind a wagon, reloading his pistol. Blood streaked his face from a cut on his forehead. "Sheriff," his head snapped toward her. "Grace, where's Martha?" "Allie, Whitmore found us. She's holding him, but—" Yates was already moving. "Stay behind me. Don't stop for anything." They ran back toward the alley. But when they got there, Martha was alone. Lying on the ground, not moving. Whitmore was gone. "No." Grace dropped to her knees beside the old woman. "No, no, no! Martha! Martha, please!" Martha's eyes fluttered open. "He hit me. With something. I couldn't hold him." "Where did he go?" "Bank. He ran to the bank." Martha grabbed Grace's arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "The basement. He has a safe there. Papers, money, everything he needs to disappear. We have to stop him." "You can't. He'll kill you." "Then he'll kill me." Grace's voice was steady. "But I'm not letting him escape. Not after everything he's done." Sheriff Yates pulled Martha to her feet, supported her weight against his shoulder. "I'll get her to safety. I know what I have to do." She ran toward the bank. The front door hung open, bullet holes pockmarking the wood. Inside the lobby was empty. Whitmore's men had either fled or been killed. Grace moved through the space, past overturned chairs and scattered papers, toward the stairs that led down. The basement door was open. She descended slowly, the rifle too heavy in her small hands, but comforting nonetheless. The stairs creaked under her weight. Each step felt like walking into a grave. At the bottom, she found him. Whitmore stood at the open safe, stuffing papers and cash into a leather bag. His movements were frantic, desperate. He didn't hear her approach. "Stop." He spun around. When he saw her, 8 years old, bruised and bloody, holding a rifle that was almost as tall as she was, he laughed. You're going to stop me." "I'm going to try." "You can barely lift that gun." "I can lift it enough." Whitmore studied her. His eyes were wild, but something calculating lurked behind the madness. "You know what your father's problem was," he said slowly. "He was sentimental. He thought that doing the right thing mattered, that being honest and hardworking would protect him. It should have. But it didn't, because this world doesn't reward good people. It rewards powerful people. He took a step toward her. Your father had something I wanted. He wouldn't give it to me, so I took it. You killed him. I removed an obstacle. Another step. Just like I'm going to remove you. Grace's finger tightened on the trigger. Don't come any closer. Or what, you'll shoot me. He smiled. Have you ever killed anyone, Grace? Do you know what it feels like to watch the life drain out of someone's eyes, to hear them beg? Stop. Your mother begged, at the end. When the wagon was tipping over, she screamed your father's name. She knew what was happening. She knew someone had cut the axle. He was close now, close enough to touch her if he reached out. She died knowing that everything she loved was about to be destroyed. Grace's hands shook. Tears streamed down her face. You're a monster. I'm a survivor. There's a difference. He lunged. Grace fired. The shot went wide, punching into the wall beside the safe. Whitmore's hand closed around the rifle barrel, wrenched it from her grip, sent her sprawling across the floor. Stupid girl. He raised the rifle reversed, it prepared to bring the stock down on her skull. Should have run when you had the chance. Grace closed her eyes. Hey, Whitmore. The voice came from the stairs. Whitmore turned. Jacob Mercer stood at the bottom of the steps. He was covered in mud and blood, swaying on his feet, exhausted beyond measure. But his pistol was steady, and his eyes were clear. Step away from her. Whitmore's face contorted. Mercer, how the roadblock my men? Your men are dead. I killed them. Jacob took a step forward. Just like I'm going to kill you if you don't drop that rifle and put your hands up. You won't shoot me, not in front of the girl. Try me. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Whitmore smiled that oily, confident smile Grace had learned to hate. You know what? You're right. This is over. He dropped the rifle, raised his hands. I surrender. Take me to the territorial marshals. Let them decide my fate. Jacob, don't trust him. Grace scrambled to her feet. He's planning something. I'm planning to survive. Whitmore's voice was smooth, now controlled. That's what I always do. I'll hire lawyers, delay the trial, find witnesses who'll say whatever I need them to say. In 6 months, I'll be a free man. And then you'll come back for her. Of course I will. She's the only witness who can hurt me. As long as she's alive, I'm vulnerable. Whitmore shrugged. It's not personal. It's business. Jacob's jaw tightened. You murdered her parents. I acquired their property. There's a difference. You beat her, starved her, terrorized her. I disciplined a difficult child. Ask any judge in the territory, they'll say I was within my rights. You're a monster. I'm a businessman. Whitmore lowered his hand slightly. But I'm also a practical man. So, let's make a deal, Mercer. You let me walk out of here with my money and papers, and I disappear. California, Mexico, somewhere far away. You'll never see me again. And Grace? Yours. Free and clear. I'll sign over guardianship today. Grace grabbed Jacob's arm. Don't listen to him. He's lying. He'll never stop. She's right, Jacob said quietly. You won't. Then what do you suggest? You can't kill me, not in cold blood, not without a trial. That's not who you are. No, it's not. Jacob lowered his pistol. Whitmore's smile widened. Then Jacob moved faster than thought, faster than Whitmore could react. He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, grabbed Whitmore by the collar, and slammed him against the wall. You're right, Jacob said. I'm not a killer, but I don't have to be. What are you? Federal marshals are 12 hours away. The townspeople saw everything you did today. And this, Jacob pulled a folded paper from his coat. This is Thomas Brennan's original will, witnessed, notarized, names me as Grace's guardian and accuses you of threatening his family. Whitmore's face went pale. Where did you get that? The watch. Your man took it from Martha at the cemetery, but he didn't know what to do with it. When I caught up to him outside Miller's Junction, he was happy to trade it for his life. That will is forged. No, your documents are forged. This is the truth. Jacob released him. And the truth is going to bury you. Whitmore staggered. His composure cracked. For the first time since Grace had known him, he looked afraid. You can't do this. I have connections. You have nothing. Sheriff Yates appeared at the bottom of the stairs, pistol drawn. Behind him, Tom Pritchard and 3 other ranchers. Your men are scattered. Your bank is surrounded. And half the town just watched you try to murder a child in the street. They won't testify. They're afraid of me. They were afraid. Yates grabbed Whitmore's arm, wrenched it behind his back. Now they're angry. And angry people don't stay quiet. He slapped handcuffs on Whitmore's wrists. Silas Whitmore, I'm placing you under arrest for the murders of Thomas and Rebecca Brennan. For fraud, forgery, and attempted murder. This isn't over. Whitmore's voice was a snarl. You think chains can hold me? You think a trial can stop me? I'll be free within a year. And when I am. When you are, I'll be waiting. Jacob stepped close, his voice dropping to a whisper only Whitmore could hear. But you won't be free. Because I'm going to testify at your trial. I'm going to tell them everything, the 6 homesteaders you murdered, the documents you forged, the families you destroyed. And when they hang you, they won't hang me. I'm too rich to hang. We'll see. Yates dragged Whitmore up the stairs. The ranchers followed, forming a protective circle. Grace stood in the basement, trembling, unable to move. Jacob knelt beside her. Hey, it's over. Is it? Her voice was small. He said he'd come back. He said, he's not coming back. Not ever. Jacob put his hand on her shoulder. I promise. How can you promise that he's right? He has money, lawyers, connections. People like him always get away. Not this time. How do you know? Jacob was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a second paper, one Grace hadn't seen before. What's that? A telegram. From the federal prosecutor in Helena. Jacob unfolded it, showed her the words. Whitmore's not just wanted here. He's wanted in 3 other territories. Murder, fraud, securities violations. The Boston investors he swindled. They've been looking for him for 2 years. Grace read the telegram slowly. The words blurred through her tears. So he's not getting away. No, he's not. Jacob folded the paper, put it back in his coat. The federal government wants him. The railroad wants him. Half the West wants him. Even if he somehow escapes our trial, they'll be waiting. And if he runs, then I'll find him, however long it takes, however far he goes. Grace looked up at him. This man she barely knew, who'd risked everything for her, who'd kept promises he'd made to a dead man 7 years ago. Why? She asked. Why did you do all this? You could have turned me over, kept your ranch, stayed out of it. I could have. So why didn't you? Jacob was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion he couldn't quite hide. Because your father looked at me once in that mine shaft with his leg crushed and blood everywhere, and he said, I've got a baby on the way. Promise me you'll make sure she's okay if something happens to me. And I said yes. I made him a promise. That was 7 years ago. You didn't even know me. Didn't matter. A promise is a promise. He stood, offered her his hand. Come on, Martha's waiting, and we've got a lot of people to thank. Grace took his hand. They walked up the stairs together. The town square was unrecognizable from the chaos of an hour ago. The bodies had been moved. The wounded were being tended in the general store. Townspeople stood in small clusters, talking in hushed voices, stealing glances at the bank where Whitmore was being held. Martha sat on a bench outside the church, a bandage wrapped around her head. When she saw Grace, she opened her arms. Grace ran to her. Pequeña, you're safe. Thank God you're safe. You were supposed to stay hidden. And you were supposed to run away. Martha pulled back, studied her face. We are a stubborn pair, you and I. We're family. Martha's eyes filled with tears. Yes, we are. Sheriff Yates approached hat in hand. His face was grim, exhausted, but something had changed in his eyes. Something like hope. "The town council's meeting tonight," he said. "They're going to discuss what happens next. With the bank, the properties, Whitmore stole all of it." "What about the guardianship?" Grace asked. "The will says Jacob is my guardian, but—" "The will is clear." A new voice, Father O'Brien, emerging from the church. The old priest looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 3 days, but his voice was strong. Thomas Brennan named Jacob Mercer as his daughter's guardian in the event of his death. The document is legal witnessed and now verified by the Territorial Land Office. So it's official. As official as anything gets out here. Father O'Brien put his hand on her head, a blessing maybe, or just the comfort of human touch. "You have a home now, child. A real one." Grace looked at Jacob. He stood a few feet away, uncomfortable with the attention, clearly wishing he could disappear into the crowd. "Mr. Mercer." He met her eyes. "Yeah. Can I call you something other than Mr. Mercer?" "What did you have in mind?" She hesitated. The word felt strange on her tongue, foreign, after so long without using it. "Papa." Jacob's face changed. Something cracked behind his eyes, a wall he'd built after burying his wife and son, a fortress of grief he'd maintained for 4 years. "I'd like that," he said quietly. Grace smiled, the first real smile since her parents died. "Okay, Papa." The townspeople gathered for the council meeting at dusk. Every seat in the church was filled, and people stood 3 deep along the walls. News had spread fast. Whitmore's arrest, the shootout, the revelation of his crimes. Everyone wanted to see what happened next. Tom Pritchard called the meeting to order. His arm was in a sling, but his voice was strong. "We're here to discuss the future of Thornton Creek. As most of you know, Silas Whitmore controlled a significant portion of this town's economy. The bank, several businesses, and numerous properties acquired through—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Questionable means." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. With his arrest, those assets are now frozen pending federal investigation. But the people affected by his crimes, the families who lost land, the businesses he extorted, they need answers now. Not in 6 months when the government gets around to it. "What are you proposing?" Someone called from the back. "I'm proposing we form a committee. Local people we trust, to inventory Whitmore's holdings and return stolen property to its rightful owners." And the bank? This was the question everyone had been waiting for. The bank was the lifeblood of the town. Without it, commerce would grind to a halt. Pritchard looked at Ellie Chen, who stood near the front with her arms crossed. Miss Chen has been keeping unofficial records for 3 years. She knows more about the bank's operations than anyone except Whitmore himself. I'm proposing we appoint her as interim manager with full authority to conduct business until a permanent solution can be arranged. Silence. Then someone in the crowd, a merchant Grace didn't recognize, stood up. "A Chinese woman running our bank, that's not what—" Ellie's voice cut through the murmurs. "Legal? It's legal. I've checked. There's no territorial law against Chinese citizens managing financial institutions, only against owning property." But you don't trust me." She stepped forward, her small frame somehow commanding the entire room. "Let me tell you what I've done in the past 3 days. I copied every fraudulent document in Whitmore's files. I provided evidence to the federal prosecutor that will ensure he never sees freedom again. I risked my life and my deportation to help a little girl I'd never met." She turned, faced the crowd. "I don't need you to trust me. I need you to be practical. The bank has to keep operating. Your loans, your savings, your businesses, they all depend on it. And right now I'm the only person in this room who knows how it works." More silence. Then Jacob stood. "I trust her." Every eye in the room turned to him. "Ellie Chen is the reason Whitmore's in chains right now. Without her evidence, without her courage, we'd still be fighting. Maybe losing." He looked at the crowd, the merchants, the ranchers, the families who'd stayed silent for too long. "I don't care where she's from or what she looks like. I care about what she's done. And what she's done is save this town." A long pause. Then Tom Pritchard raised his hand. All in favor of appointing Eleanor Chen as interim bank manager. Hands went up. Slowly at first, then faster. Not everyone the merchant who'd objected kept his arms crossed, and a few others followed his lead, but a clear majority. Motion carries. Pritchard nodded at Ellie. Congratulations, Miss Chen. The bank is yours. Ellie's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Relief, maybe, or vindication. I won't let you down, she said. The meeting continued discussions of property redistribution, restitution for affected families, preparations for Whitmore's trial. Grace sat between Jacob and Martha, fighting to keep her eyes open. The exhaustion of the past 3 days was finally catching up to her. Tired? Jacob asked quietly. A little. We can leave. They don't need us for this part. I want to stay. I want to see how it ends. Jacob smiled, a real smile, the first she'd seen from him. It doesn't end. That's the thing about towns. They just keep going one day at a time. Is that bad? No, it's good. Means there's always tomorrow. The meeting ended close to midnight. People filed out into the cold, their breath visible in the lamplight, their voices low with exhaustion and cautious hope. Jacob lifted Grace onto his horse. She was too tired to climb up herself, and led the animal through the quiet streets toward home. Martha rode beside them, silent but present. The ranch appeared through the trees, dark against the snow. The barn was still half burned, the yard still scarred by hoofprints and wagon tracks. But the house was standing. The chimney was whole. And the sign by the gate, Mercer Ranch, still hung in its place. Tomorrow we'll start rebuilding, Jacob said. The barn first, then the fences. Going to be a lot of work. I can help. I know you can. He carried her inside, set her on the settee by the fire. But tonight you rest. Will you stay until I fall asleep? Jacob looked at her, this child who'd lost everything, who'd fought for her life, who'd somehow managed to keep believing that good people existed. I'll stay, he said. Long as you need. Grace closed her eyes. For the first time in 2 months, she slept without nightmares. The next morning, she woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. Martha was in the kitchen, humming something in Spanish, moving with the ease of someone who'd finally stopped running. Jacob sat at the table, papers spread before him. When he saw Grace in the doorway, he pushed back his chair. Morning. How'd you sleep? Good. She rubbed her eyes. What are those legal documents? Ellie brought them over at dawn. He held up one of the papers. This is the deed to your parents' land. 300 acres, including water rights and mineral claims. Grace took the paper, traced her parents' names with her finger. It's mine. It's yours. In trust until you're 18, but the property is legally in your name. What happens to it now? That's up to you. You could sell it, lease it, let it sit until you're old enough to decide. Jacob paused. Or I could work it for you. Run cattle on the land, pay you a share of the profits. Build it into something worth having. You'd do that. If you want me to. Grace looked at the deed, at her parents' names, at the land they'd died protecting. I want you to, she said. I want you to build something for them. Jacob nodded slowly. Then that's what we'll do. Martha set plates on the table, bacon, eggs, biscuits with honey, more food than Grace had seen in months. Eat, Martha commanded. You are too skinny. A strong wind could blow you away. Yes, ma'am. They ate in comfortable silence. The fire crackled. The coffee steamed. Outside, the sun rose over the mountains, painting the snow gold and pink. Grace thought about her parents, about the life she'd lost, and the life she was beginning, about the people who'd fought for her, strangers, who'd become family enemies, who'd become allies, a broken man who'd kept a promise made to a dying stranger. Papa, she said suddenly. Jacob looked up from his plate. Yeah. Thank you, for everything. He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached across the table, put his hand over hers. "You're welcome," he said, "but you don't have to thank me." "Why not?" "Because this is what family does. We show up, we fight, we stay." His voice was rough. "That's the deal." Grace smiled. "That's a good deal." "Yeah." Jacob squeezed her hand. "It is." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. But inside, the fire burned warm, and the house was full of voices, and for the first time in a very long time, Grace Brennan felt like she was home. The telegram arrived 3 days later. Jacob read it twice, then set it down on the kitchen table. His face was unreadable. "What is it?" Grace asked. "Federal marshals reached Helena. They've reviewed the evidence, interviewed witnesses." He paused. "Whitmore's being transferred to federal custody. Trial set for April." "That's good, right?" "It's good." But something in his voice suggested otherwise. "What aren't you telling me?" Jacob looked at her. This child who saw too much, who understood more than any 8-year-old should. "The Boston investors, the ones Whitmore swindled. They're sending a representative to testify." So the representative is named Marcus Whitmore." Jacob's jaw tightened. "Silas's brother." Grace's blood went cold. "He has a brother, apparently. And according to the telegram, Marcus is even more dangerous than Silas. Runs their family's operation back east. Railroads, banks, politicians, all in his pocket." "Is he coming here?" "He's coming to the trial, which means he's coming to Wyoming." Jacob stood, walked to the window. "And if he's anything like his brother, he's not coming to testify. He's coming to clean up." "Clean up?" "Witnesses. Evidence. Anyone who can connect the Whitmore family to crimes." Jacob turned to face her. "Including you." The word hung in the air between them. Grace felt the fear creeping back, the same fear she'd lived with for 2 months under Silas's roof. The fear that no matter how far she ran, how hard she fought, the evil would always find her. Then she looked at Jacob, at Martha standing in the doorway, at the house around her, solid and warm and real. "Let him come," she said quietly. "Grace, let him come." Her voice was stronger now. "I'm not running anymore. I'm not hiding. If Marcus Whitmore wants to find me, he knows where I am. This isn't a game. These people, I know what these people are. I lived with them. I survived them." She stood, faced him. "And I'm not afraid anymore." Jacob studied her for a long moment. "You should be afraid," he said finally. "Maybe, but I'm not." She smiled, a small smile, but real. "Because I'm not alone anymore." Martha crossed the room, put her arm around Grace's shoulders. "The child is right. We stand together, whatever comes." Jacob looked at them, his new family forged in fire and blood and desperate hope. "All right," he said. "Then we prepare. We strengthen the ranch. We build alliances. We make sure that when Marcus Whitmore arrives, he finds something he doesn't expect." "What's that?" Jacob's face hardened. "A family that fights back." Marcus Whitmore arrived on the noon stage 3 weeks before the trial. Grace saw him first. She'd been helping Ellie at the bank, learning columns and figures the way Martha had taught her letters when the stage rolled into town. A man stepped out, tall, thin, dressed in black from hat to boots. He moved like a snake, slow and deliberate, his eyes scanning the street with cold precision. "That's him," Grace whispered. Ellie looked up from her ledger. Her face went pale. "Get Jacob, now." Grace ran. She found him at the general store loading supplies into the wagon. "Papa, he's here. Marcus Whitmore. He just got off the stage." Jacob set down the flour sack. His jaw tightened. "Where?" "Main Street, outside the hotel." "Stay here. Don't move." "But, Grace." His voice was sharp. "Stay here." He walked toward the hotel. Grace watched him go, her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd promised to stay, but she couldn't just stand there, not when everything they'd built was about to be tested. She followed at a distance. Jacob reached the hotel as Marcus was climbing the steps. The two men faced each other on the boardwalk, Jacob in his dusty work clothes, Marcus in his tailored suit. "Mr. Mercer, I presume?" Marcus's voice was cultured Eastern, nothing like his brother's rough edge. "I've heard a great deal about you." "Wish I could say the same." "Modest, I appreciate that." Marcus smiled, a thin, cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm here to observe my brother's trial, ensure he receives fair treatment. He'll get what he deserves." "Will he? In a town that's already convicted him in the court of public opinion?" Marcus shook his head. "I think not. That's why I've brought my own attorneys. And my own witnesses." "Witnesses to what?" "To the truth, Mr. Mercer. The truth about what really happened to Thomas Brennan and his wife." Jacob's hands curled into fists. "Your brother murdered them." "My brother made a business decision that went wrong. There's a difference." Marcus pulled a paper from his coat. "I have here affidavits from 3 individuals who will testify that Thomas Brennan was in significant debt, that he sabotaged his own wagon to collect insurance money, that his death was suicide, not murder." "That's a lie." "Prove it." Marcus tucked the paper away. "In the meantime, I'll be conducting my own investigation, interviewing witnesses, reviewing evidence." His eyes found Grace standing 30 feet away. "Including that charming little girl who's been telling such creative stories about my brother." Jacob stepped between them, blocking Marcus's view. "You stay away from her." "I'm simply seeking the truth. Surely you don't object to that." "I object to you breathing the same air as her." Marcus laughed, a soft, dangerous sound. "You're protective. I understand. She's a valuable asset. The only eyewitness who can place my brother at the scene of a crime." He leaned closer, dropping his voice. "But eyewitnesses can be unreliable. Children especially. Their memories are so easily confused." "Is that a threat?" "It's an observation." Marcus stepped back, tipped his hat. "Good day, Mr. Mercer. I'm sure we'll be seeing quite a bit of each other in the coming weeks." He disappeared into the hotel. Jacob stood motionless on the boardwalk. Grace approached, slowly touching his arm. "Papa, I told you to stay at the store." "I couldn't. I had to see." He turned, looked down at her. The fear in his eyes scared her more than Marcus Whitmore ever could. "This is going to get worse," he said quietly, "before it gets better. You understand that?" "I understand." "And you're still not afraid?" Grace thought about it. Really thought. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "But I'm more angry than afraid. Does that make sense?" Jacob's expression softened slightly. "Yeah, it makes sense." They walked back to the store together. But Grace couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus Whitmore's cold eyes were still watching them, calculating, planning, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That night, the first witness recanted. Tom Pritchard came to the ranch after dark, his face gray with exhaustion, and something else. Something like shame. "They got to Henderson," he said, "the merchant who was going to testify about Whitmore's extortion scheme. He's changed his story, says he misremembered, says the payments were legitimate." Jacob slammed his fist on the table. "How? Money, threats, probably both." Pritchard sank into a chair. "Marcus met with him this afternoon, privately. Whatever was said, it worked. Henderson was solid. He saw Whitmore's men burn down his competitor's store. He saw what he saw, but seeing and testifying are different things, especially when a man like Marcus Whitmore is asking you to reconsider." Grace sat in the corner listening. Each word felt like a stone dropping into her stomach. "How many witnesses do we have left?" Jacob asked. 6, maybe 5 if the Roberts family decides it's not worth the risk. "And if more recant?" Pritchard didn't answer. He didn't have to. "We need to protect them," Jacob said. "The remaining witnesses, we need to make sure Marcus can't get to them." "How we can't guard 6 families around the clock? We don't have the manpower. Then we get more manpower. From where? Jacob was silent for a moment. Then he looked at Grace. The families Whitmore hurt, the ones who lost everything. They've got nothing left to lose. They're scattered across the territory. Then we bring them back. We show them that they're not alone, that if they stand together, Marcus Whitmore can't touch them. Pritchard shook his head slowly. That's a lot of riding, a lot of convincing. I'll do it. Alone. If I have to. Grace stood up. No. Both men turned to look at her. You're not going alone, she said. I'm coming with you. Grace. They need to see me, the families. They need to see what Whitmore did, what he tried to do. She lifted her chin. I'm the one who survived. I'm the one who can tell them it's worth fighting. It's too dangerous. Everything is dangerous. You said so yourself. She walked to him, took his hand. But we're family now, and family doesn't let family fight alone. Jacob looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Pritchard. Can you hold things here? Keep an eye on the remaining witnesses. I can try. Then we leave at dawn. They rode for 5 days. The first family, the Hendersons, no relation to the merchant, had lost their homestead to Whitmore 3 years ago. They lived in a dugout now, barely surviving their 3 children, thin as rails. The mother listened to Grace's story with tears streaming down her face. We knew, she said. We knew it wasn't an accident, but nobody believed us. They'll believe us now, Grace said. If you come back, if you testify. And then what? Whitmore's brother will destroy us. We have nothing left to take, but we still have our lives. Jacob stepped forward. Ma'am, I know you're scared. You've got every right to be. But your silence is exactly what Marcus Whitmore is counting on. He knows that if everyone stays quiet, his brother walks free. And if Silas walks free, he'll do this again. To another family. Maybe yours. Mrs. Henderson looked at her children, at her husband standing silent in the corner. We don't have money for travel. I'll pay for it. Food, lodging, everything. We don't have proper clothes for a courtroom. We'll find some. We don't have... She stopped, swallowed. We don't have hope anymore. That man took it from us. Grace reached out, took the woman's hands. I didn't have hope either, she said quietly. When my parents died, when my uncle beat me, when everyone told me I was crazy, I had nothing. Just memories and fear. What changed? Someone believed me. Grace looked at Jacob. Someone listened, and then other people listened, and then I wasn't alone anymore. Mrs. Henderson was crying openly now. You're just a child. How can you be so brave? I'm not brave. I'm just tired of being scared. They left the Henderson dugout with a promise. 2 days later, they had 3 more families committed to testifying. By the end of the week, they had 7, including 2 who'd never spoken publicly about what Whitmore had done to them. But Marcus Whitmore wasn't idle. When they returned to Thornton Creek, they found the town transformed. Posters covered every available surface. Justice for Silas Whitmore. The truth about the Brennan fraud. A new witness comes forward. What the hell? Jacob muttered. Sheriff Yates met them at the edge of town. His face was grim. It's bad. Marcus brought in a woman from Helena, claims she was Thomas Brennan's mistress. Says he told her he was planning to fake his death and run off with the life insurance money. That's insane. It's effective. Half the town is starting to believe it. Thomas Brennan was devoted to his wife. Everyone knew that. Everyone knows what they saw with their own eyes. What they're being told now is different. Yates spit in the dirt. Marcus is smart. He's not attacking the evidence directly. He's attacking Thomas's character, making people doubt the victim. Grace felt sick. My father would never... I know that. You know that. But the people who didn't know him personally, they're starting to wonder. We have to stop this. How? He's not breaking any laws. Just spreading rumors and paying for advertisements. Jacob's jaw tightened. Where's this woman, the one claiming to be Thomas's mistress? Hotel, room 12. She's giving interviews to anyone who'll listen. Then it's time someone listened who knows the truth. He walked toward the hotel. Grace ran after him. Papa, wait. Stay here. No. I need to see her. I need to look her in the eye and know if she's lying. You already know she's lying. But does she know that I know? Grace grabbed his arm. Let me talk to her, please. Jacob hesitated. Every instinct told him to protect this child to shield her from more pain. But he'd learned something in the past few weeks. Grace didn't need shielding. She needed to fight. Fine. But I'm coming with you. They found the woman in the hotel lobby, holding court for a group of curious townspeople. She was pretty in a hard way, her dress slightly too fine, her smile slightly too practiced. And Thomas told me he couldn't stand living the lie anymore, she was saying. He said the ranch was failing, the debts were crushing him. He had a plan to make it all go away. That's a lie. Everyone turned. Grace stood in the doorway, small and fierce, her eyes blazing. My father never had a mistress. He loved my mother. He worked 16 hours a day to make that ranch succeed. And he never would have abandoned his family. The woman's smile flickered. You must be the daughter. I'm so sorry for your loss, dear. Your father was complicated. My father was honest, unlike you. I understand you're upset. It's natural to want to protect his memory, but where did you meet him? The woman hesitated, just for a second. In Helena, at a hotel. Which hotel? I don't remember the name. When? About 2 years ago. My father never went to Helena 2 years ago. He was recovering from a broken leg. He didn't leave the ranch for 6 months. The woman's face went pale. I must have the dates confused. What did he look like? Describe him. Tall, brown hair, kind eyes. My father had blue eyes, and he was short, barely 5'6". Grace stepped closer. You never met him, did you? Someone paid you to tell these lies. The woman stood abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. I'm here to help, and if you don't want... Who paid you? Jacob's voice cut through the room. Marcus Whitmore. How much? I don't know what you're talking about. $100. $200. What's the going rate for destroying a dead man's reputation? The woman's composure cracked. This was a mistake. I'm leaving. She pushed toward the door, but Jacob blocked her path. You can leave, but when the federal marshals arrive tomorrow, they're going to want to talk to you. About perjury, about conspiracy, about what happens to witnesses who lie under oath. I haven't testified to anything. Not yet. But if you try to take the stand with these lies, I'll make sure you spend the next 10 years in prison. He leaned close. Marcus Whitmore can't protect you. He can't even protect his brother. All he can do is make promises he won't keep. The woman's face crumpled. He said it would be easy. Said I'd just have to tell a simple story and collect my money. How much? $500. Half now, half after the trial. Jacob stepped aside. Get out of town. Tonight. Before I change my mind about letting you go. She ran. The townspeople who'd been listening stared at Grace with something like awe. That was, one of them started. The truth, Grace finished. That's all it was. Word spread fast. By evening, everyone in Thornton Creek knew that Marcus Whitmore's star witness had been exposed as a fraud. The posters came down, the whispers shifted, and for the first time since Marcus arrived, people started talking about justice again. But Marcus wasn't finished. He came to the ranch that night. Jacob heard the hoofbeats, first grabbed his rifle, went to the door. Marcus sat on a fine black horse alone, his hands visible and empty. May I come in? No. Then we'll talk here. Marcus dismounted slowly. You've been busy, Mr. Mercer. Gathering witnesses exposing my attempts to clarify the narrative. You mean lie. I mean present an alternative interpretation of events. Marcus's smile was thin. But I'll admit you've outmaneuvered me, for now. If you're here to threaten me, I'm here to make you an offer. Marcus pulled an envelope from his coat. $50,000, cash. More money than you'll see in 10 lifetimes. Jacob didn't move. In exchange for what? The girl. Her testimony. You convince her to recant, say she was confused, traumatized, misremembered, and this is yours. You want me to sell her. I want you to be practical. My brother is going to be convicted. I've accepted that. But a murder conviction means hanging. A lesser charge means prison. 10 years, maybe 15. Marcus's voice was silky. Without Grace's testimony, the prosecution has circumstantial evidence at best. They can prove fraud, but not murder. Silas does his time and comes out a chastened man. A chastened murderer. A living one, which is more than Thomas Brennan can say. Jacob's finger itched toward the trigger. Get off my land. Think about it. $50,000. You could build an empire, give that girl everything she ever wanted. She wants her parents back. Can your money do that? Marcus's expression didn't change. No, but it can buy a future. For both of you. My future isn't for sale, neither is hers. For a long moment, Marcus just looked at him. Then he tucked the envelope back in his coat. You're making a mistake, Mr. Mercer. I offered you partnership. What comes next is considerably less pleasant. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Marcus mounted his horse. Enjoy your remaining days of peace. They're numbered. He rode into the darkness. Grace appeared behind Jacob. I heard everything. You were supposed to be asleep. I couldn't sleep, not with him out there. She looked up at him. He's not going to stop, is he? No. What do we do? Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Then he closed the door, bolted it, and turned to face her. We do what we've been doing. We tell the truth. We stand together. We don't give up. And if that's not enough, it has to be enough. He put his hand on her shoulder. Because if truth and courage and stubborn determination aren't enough to defeat men like Marcus Whitmore, then nothing is. And I refuse to believe that. You sound like Papa, my real Papa. He was a wise man. He was scared at the end. I could see it in his eyes, even though he tried to hide it. Grace's voice was small. Are you scared? Jacob thought about lying, thought about protecting her from the truth. Then he remembered what she'd said, that family doesn't let family fight alone. Yeah, he admitted. I'm scared. But you're going to fight anyway. Yeah, I am. Why? He looked at her, this brave, broken, beautiful child, who'd somehow become his daughter. Because you're worth fighting for, he said simply. And because some things matter more than fear. Grace hugged him, tight, fierce, like she was holding on to the only solid thing in a world that kept trying to sweep her away. I love you, Papa. The words hit him like a bullet to the chest. 4 years since anyone had called him that. 4 years since he'd let himself love anything. I love you too, he whispered. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. She went upstairs. Jacob sat by the fire all night, rifle across his knees, waiting for whatever Marcus Whitmore would send next. The attack came at dawn. Not gunmen this time. Something worse. A federal marshal rode up to the ranch papers in hand, face grim. Jacob Mercer. That's me. I'm serving you with a court order. Emergency custody hearing. Silas Whitmore is challenging your guardianship of Grace Brennan. On what grounds? Unfit home environment. Specifically allegations that you've been coaching the child to provide false testimony against her legal guardian. That's absurd. Maybe, but a judge signed off on it. Hearings tomorrow. If you can't prove your fitness, the child goes to state custody, pending the outcome of Whitmore's trial. State custody means Marcus Whitmore has plenty of time to make her disappear. The marshal's face was expressionless, but something flickered in his eyes. I'm just the messenger, Mr. Mercer. But if I were you, I'd get a damn good lawyer. He rode away. Jacob stood in the yard, paper in hand, feeling the ground crumble beneath his feet. Papa. Grace stood in the doorway, her face pale. I heard. They're trying to take me away. They're trying, but they won't succeed. How do you know? He didn't. Not for certain. Marcus Whitmore had money lawyers' judges in his pocket. All Jacob had was the truth and a community that was just learning how to stand together. But sometimes that was enough. Get dressed, he said. We're going to town. We're going to fight this the same way we've fought everything else, head on together, refusing to quit. And if we lose, Jacob crouched down, met her eyes. We won't. But if we do, then we'll find another way, and another after that. Because that's what family does, Grace. We don't give up. We don't surrender. We keep fighting until there's nothing left to fight with, and then we find something else. Grace took a breath, squared her shoulders. Okay, let's go. They rode into town as the sun rose, and whatever waited for them there, whatever Marcus Whitmore had planned, they would face it together, as a family. The courthouse was packed before noon, every seat taken. People standing along the walls, spilling out onto the boardwalk. Jacob had never seen anything like it. The whole county had come to watch, not just for Silas Whitmore's murder trial, but for the custody hearing that would decide Grace's fate. Ellie Chen met them at the courthouse steps. I found something, she said, her voice low and urgent. Last night in the bank records, Marcus made a transfer 3 days ago. $15,000 to Judge Harrison's personal account. The judge overseeing our custody hearing? The same. Ellie pressed a folded paper into Jacob's hand. I made copies. If Harrison rules against you, this proves he was bribed. Will it be enough to overturn the decision? It'll be enough to delay it, buy you time to appeal to the territorial court. Jacob looked at the paper. $15,000. The price of a child's future. Thank you, Ellie, for everything. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won. They entered the courthouse together. Marcus Whitmore sat in the front row, immaculate in his black suit, his face composed and confident. Silas sat at the defendant's table in chains thinner than before, his arrogance dimmed, but not extinguished. Grace squeezed Jacob's hand. I'm scared. I know. Me too. But we're not giving up. Never. Judge Harrison entered. He was 60, gray-haired, with the soft hands of a man who'd never done an honest day's work. His eyes swept the courtroom, lingering for just a moment on Marcus Whitmore. This court is now in session. First matter, the emergency custody petition filed by Silas Whitmore, challenging the guardianship of Grace Brennan by Jacob Mercer. Marcus rose. Your Honor, if I may speak on my brother's behalf. Proceed. Thank you. Marcus turned to face the crowd, his voice carrying easily through the packed room. My brother made mistakes. He admits that. But he is this child's blood relative, her only living family, and she has been kept from him by a man with no legal claim, no blood connection, and we now know a financial interest in seeing my brother convicted. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mr. Mercer controls the Brennan homestead. He profits from the child's inheritance. Is it any wonder he's been coaching her to testify against the only person who might challenge his control? Jacob stood. That's a lie. Mr. Mercer, you'll have your chance to speak. Judge Harrison's voice was sharp. Sit down. Your Honor, this man is accusing me of... Sit down. Jacob sat. His hands were shaking with rage. Marcus continued, his voice smooth and reasonable. I'm not here to attack Mr. Mercer's character. I'm simply asking this court to consider what's best for the child. She needs stability, family, a proper home, not a ranch run by a widower with no experience raising children. I've been raising her for 2 months, Jacob said. She's healthy, she's safe, she's loved. She's also been traumatized, Marcus countered, by the loss of her parents, by the upheaval in her life, and I submit by Mr. Mercer's relentless campaign to use her as a weapon against my brother. Your brother beat her. Your honor. Enough. Harrison slammed his gavel. One more outburst, Mr. Mercer, and I'll hold you in contempt. Grace stood up. The room went silent. Your honor. Her voice was small but steady. May I speak? Harrison hesitated. This is highly irregular. Please, it's my life. I should have a say in it. Harrison looked at Marcus. Marcus shrugged a calculated gesture of reasonableness. Very well. Briefly. Grace walked to the front of the courtroom. Every eye in the room followed her. My name is Grace Brennan. I'm 8 years old. My parents were murdered 2 months ago. Marcus started to object. Harrison waved him silent. I know who killed them. It was my uncle, Silas Whitmore. He wanted our land. He forged documents, bribed officials, and when my father wouldn't sell, he had our wagon sabotaged. This is the coached testimony we've been. Let her speak. Harrison's voice was sharp. Something had changed in his expression, doubt maybe, or the first stirring of conscience. Grace continued. After my parents died, Silas took me. He said he was my guardian. He said I had to do what he told me. And when I wouldn't tell him where my father hid the deed. She pulled up her sleeve, showed the faded bruises on her arm. He did this. Gasps from the crowd. I ran away, in a blizzard. I walked 6 miles through the snow because I remembered something my mother told me, that if anything ever happened to them, I should find Jacob Mercer. She said he was the only honest man she knew. She turned to face the judge directly. Jacob didn't coach me. He didn't tell me what to say. He just listened. He believed me when no one else would. He protected me when everyone else was too scared. Her voice cracked. And now his brother, she pointed at Marcus, wants to take me away so I can't testify. So Silas can get away with murder. So they can steal my parents' land and pretend none of this ever happened. That's not... Marcus started. I'm not finished. Grace's eyes blazed. You asked what's best for me. I'll tell you what's best. What's best is for the truth to come out. What's best is for the men who killed my parents to face justice. And what's best? Her voice softened. What's best is for me to stay with the only person who's ever treated me like I matter. She walked back to Jacob, took his hand. He's my papa now. The only one I want. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Then Tom Pritchard stood. Your Honor, I'd like to speak on Mr. Mercer's behalf. Harrison sighed. This isn't... Please, just a minute. Fine, 1 minute. Pritchard walked to the front. I've known Jacob Mercer for 10 years. He's a hard man. Not much for talking, not much for socializing. After his wife and son died, he shut himself off from everyone. We figured he'd just fade away eventually, another casualty of the frontier. He paused. Then this girl showed up, and something changed. Jacob started coming into town again, started talking to people, started giving a damn about something other than his cattle. Pritchard looked at Grace. She brought him back to life, and he'd die before he let anyone hurt her. Mrs. Henderson stood. I want to speak too. Then another voice. Then another. One by one, the witnesses Jacob had gathered rose to their feet. The families Whitmore had destroyed. The merchants he'd extorted. The ranchers he'd threatened. He helped us rebuild after the fire. He gave us money when we had nothing. He believed us when no one else would. He's a good man, the best we've got. Harrison looked at the crowd, dozens of people all standing, all speaking for one man. Then he looked at Marcus Whitmore, sitting alone in the front row, his confident smile finally fading. Mr. Whitmore, the judge said slowly. "You claim Mr. Mercer has no community standing. It appears the community disagrees. These people they've been manipulated. They've been wronged by your brother, and they're standing with the man who helped them fight back." Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up his gavel. "This court finds that the emergency custody petition lacks merit. Jacob Mercer's guardianship of Grace Brennan is hereby affirmed. Petition dismissed." The courtroom erupted. Grace threw her arms around Jacob, sobbing with relief. People cheered, shouted, pounded the benches. Martha pushed through the crowd to embrace them both, tears streaming down her weathered face. Marcus Whitmore stood slowly. His face was a mask, but his eyes burned with cold fury. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "The murder trial hasn't begun yet." "And when it does," Jacob replied, "your brother is going to hang." "We'll see." Marcus walked out. The crowd parted for him, silent, watching him go, like they'd watch a rattlesnake leaving their campsite. The murder trial began the next morning. Federal prosecutor William Harding had arrived from Helena with a team of lawyers and a stack of evidence a foot high. He'd spent 3 days interviewing witnesses, reviewing documents, building a case that would leave no room for doubt. Silas Whitmore sat at the defendant's table, his expensive lawyers flanking him like guard dogs. He'd lost weight in prison, lost some of his swagger, but his eyes still held that calculating coldness. Marcus sat behind him, watching everything. "The territory of Wyoming calls Grace Brennan to the stand." Grace walked forward alone. Jacob had offered to come with her, but she'd shaken her head. "I have to do this myself." The clerk swore her in. She placed her hand on the Bible, promised to tell the truth, sat in the witness chair. She looked so small there, so young, but her eyes were steady. Prosecutor Harding approached. "Miss Brennan, can you tell the court about the day your parents died?" "Yes, sir." Grace took a breath. "It was morning. We were going to town for supplies. Papa checked the wagon twice. He always checked everything twice. Said it was the only way to stay safe on the frontier." "Did he find anything wrong?" "No. He said the wagon was fine." "What happened next?" "We left the ranch. The road was flat, the flattest stretch between our place and town. Papa always said it was the safest part of the trip." "And then—" Grace's voice wavered slightly. "The wheel came off. Just snapped. The wagon flipped. Mama screamed. Papa tried to hold on, but—" She stopped. Swallowed. "They were thrown out. Both of them. They hit the rocks by the creek." "Did they survive the impact?" "No." "What did you do?" "I crawled out of the wagon. Tried to wake them up. But they wouldn't. They didn't." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I stayed with them until someone found us. Hours, I think. I don't really remember." Harding let the silence hold. Then gently, "What happened after the funeral?" "Uncle Silas came. He said he was my guardian now. He said I had to come live with him." "How did he treat you?" Grace's hands tightened in her lap. "He asked about papers, documents. He said Papa had hidden something valuable, and I had to tell him where it was." "Did you know what he was talking about?" "No. I was 8. Papa never talked to me about business." "What happened when you couldn't tell him?" "He got angry." "How did he show his anger?" "He hit me." Grace's voice was barely above a whisper. "With his belt, with his hands, once with a cane." Gasps from the gallery. Silas's lawyers objected irrelevant, prejudicial, but Judge Harrison overruled them. "Did he ever say anything that made you believe he was involved in your parents' deaths?" "Yes." Grace looked directly at Silas for the first time. "The night before I ran away. He was drunk. He said—" She steadied herself. "He said Papa should have sold when he had the chance. Said it would have been easier for everyone. Said some people just had to learn the hard way." "What did you understand that to mean? That he killed them? That he made the wagon crash because Papa wouldn't give him our land?" Silas's lead lawyer jumped up. Objection. The witness is speculating. She has no direct evidence. I'm not finished, Grace said. The courtroom went silent. The night I ran away, I heard Uncle Silas talking to someone, one of his men. He said, she closed her eyes remembering. The Mercer Ranch is next. Same method as the Brennans. Make it look like an accident. The gallery erupted. Harding raised his voice over the chaos. Are you saying the defendant discussed murdering Jacob Mercer? Yes. And he said, Grace's voice broke. He said after Mercer was dead he'd take me back. Finish what we started. Those were his words. Silas was on his feet. She's lying. She's been coached. Mercer put her up to this. Mr. Whitmore, sit down. Harrison's gavel cracked like a gunshot. This is a conspiracy. My brother paid these people to destroy me. Remove the defendant if he cannot control himself. Guards moved forward. Silas struggled against them, his face purple with rage. You think you've won, he screamed at Grace. You think this changes anything my brother will... The guards dragged him from the courtroom. His screaming echoed down the hallway, growing fainter, until finally a door slammed and silence returned. Grace sat motionless in the witness chair, trembling. Harding approached her gently. Are you all right, Miss Brennan? Yes, sir. Just a few more questions. You testified that you heard the defendant planning to kill Jacob Mercer. Did you tell anyone about this at the time? I told Martha, Mr. Mercer's housekeeper, and I told Mr. Mercer when he came back from Helena. Why didn't you go to the authorities? Because the authorities worked for Uncle Silas. Grace's voice was stronger now. The sheriff owed him money. The judge was his friend. There was no one to tell. What made you finally come forward? Grace looked at Jacob. Because someone believed me. And once someone believed me, I wasn't scared anymore. Harding nodded. No further questions. The defense attorney approached for cross-examination. He was smooth, expensive, clearly hired from back east. Miss Brennan, you've been through a terrible ordeal. No one disputes that. Thank you. But I have to ask, isn't it possible that your memory has been affected by trauma, that you've filled in gaps with things that didn't actually happen? No. You were 8 years old when your parents died. Children that age often struggle to separate reality from imagination. I know what I heard. Do you? Or do you know what Mr. Mercer told you, you heard? Grace's eyes flashed. Mr. Mercer never told me what to say. He just asked what happened, and I told him the truth. The truth as you remember it. The truth as it happened. The lawyer changed tactics. Miss Brennan, do you love Mr. Mercer? Yes. Do you want to stay with him? Yes. And if my client is convicted, Mr. Mercer keeps control of your inheritance. Isn't that convenient? He doesn't care about the money. How do you know? Because he spent everything he had trying to save me, sold his cattle, risked his life, almost died. Grace's voice rose. What did your client do? He beat me, starved me, killed my parents, and now you're saying Jacob is the one with bad intentions. I'm simply asking. I know what you're asking, and the answer is no. Jacob Mercer is the most honest man I've ever known, and your client is a murderer. The lawyer looked at the jury, saw their faces hard closed, unsympathetic. No further questions. Grace stepped down from the witness stand. As she passed Jacob, she reached out and squeezed his hand. I did it. You did. I'm proud of you. The trial lasted 3 more days. Harding called witness after witness. The families Whitmore had destroyed. The documents Ellie had copied. The surveyors saw with Silas's initials that matched the cut marks on the Brennan wagon axle. And finally, the testimony that broke the case open. Sheriff Yates took the stand. I was there the night the Brennan wagon was found, he said, and I lied about what I saw. The courtroom fell silent. The axle wasn't broken. It was cut, clean through. I knew it the moment I looked at it. But Silas Whitmore was standing right there watching me, and I owed him $2,000, so I wrote it up as an accident. Why are you coming forward now? Yates looked at Grace. Because that little girl did something I couldn't do. She told the truth even when it terrified her. And if an 8-year-old can be that brave, what's my excuse? He produced a document, his original notes from the scene, hidden in his home for 2 months. These are my real observations. The ones I made before Whitmore told me what to write. They show deliberate sabotage, murder. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Guilty. All counts. Silas Whitmore was sentenced to hang. But Marcus Whitmore was gone. They found his hotel room empty, his horse missing. He'd slipped away during the final day of testimony, heading east with whatever money he could carry. Jacob stood on the courthouse steps watching the sunset. "He'll be back," he said quietly. Sheriff Yates stood beside him. "Maybe, but he's got federal warrants in 3 territories now. Hard to run a criminal empire when you're the one running." "What about the families, the ones he destroyed?" "Territorial governments sorting through Whitmore's assets. The properties he stole are being returned to their original owners or their heirs." Yates paused. "The Henderson family, the Brennans, all of them, getting back what was taken. And the money? Most of it's gone. Marcus took what he could, but there's enough left to compensate some of the victims." Yates turned to face Jacob. "Including you. The prosecutor says you've got a claim for damages, thousands of dollars probably." Jacob shook his head. "I don't want his money." "Most folks would." "I'm not most folks." He looked back at the courthouse where Grace was saying goodbye to the families who'd testified. "I've got everything I need." 1 week later, they buried Silas Whitmore. Not in the town cemetery, the citizens of Thornton Creek voted against that. They buried him on a hill outside town, unmarked, forgotten. A man who'd stolen so much, leaving nothing behind but a hole in the ground. Jacob didn't attend. Neither did Grace. They spent the day at the Brennan homestead instead, walking the land Thomas and Rebecca had died protecting. "This is where Mama planted her garden," Grace said, pointing to a patch of turned earth. "She grew tomatoes, squash, herbs for cooking. You remember? Some of it, little things." She was quiet for a moment. "Do you think they'd be proud of me?" "I know they would. Even though I was scared. Especially because you were scared." Jacob crouched down, met her eyes. "Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. That's what you did. That's what you did too. We did it together." They walked to the Crooked Creek, where Thomas had hidden the watch where Martha had found the will that saved Grace's future. "What happens now?" Grace asked. "Now we go home. We rebuild. We live. And the bad men, the ones like Marcus, they're still out there, always will be." Jacob put his hand on her shoulder. "But so are the good people, the ones who stand up, the ones who fight. As long as there are people like that, the bad men can't win. People like us. People like us." They rode back to the ranch as the sun set. The house was waiting, warm light spilling from the windows, Martha visible in the kitchen preparing dinner. At the gate, Grace reined in her horse. "Papa?" "Yeah." "Can we make a new sign for the ranch?" Jacob looked at the old sign. Mercer Ranch, weathered but standing. "What did you have in mind?" Grace smiled. "Mercer and Brennan Ranch. Because that's what we are now. Both of us." Jacob felt something shift in his chest. The last frozen piece of his heart finally thawing. "I'd like that." They rode up to the house together. Martha came out to meet them, wiping her hands on her apron. "Dinner's ready. Wash up." "Yes, ma'am," they said in unison, and then looked at each other and laughed. They ate together that night, the 3 of them, around the table in the warm kitchen. They talked about the future spring planting, the cattle drive, Grace's schooling. Small things. Normal things. After dinner, Grace fell asleep by the fire, her head on Martha's lap. The old woman stroked her hair, humming a soft Mexican lullaby. Jacob watched them from his chair. This family he'd built from broken pieces, a woman who'd lost everything, and kept going, a child who'd survived the unsurvivable, and himself, the man who'd thought he had nothing left to live for. He thought about Thomas Brennan dying in that mine shaft, making him promise to protect a daughter who hadn't even been born yet. He thought about his own son, buried 4 years now, who would never grow up, never ride horses, never fall in love. He thought about all the paths that had led him here to this moment in this house with these people. And he understood something. The grief never went away. The loss never disappeared. But around it, through it, despite it, life kept growing. New connections, new family, new reasons to get up in the morning. That was the real victory. Not the trial, not the conviction, not the property returned or the villain defeated. The real victory was this: an orphan who'd learned to trust again. A widow who'd found a new home. A broken man who'd remembered how to love. Grace stirred in her sleep, murmured something that sounded like "Papa." Jacob smiled. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." 3 months later, spring arrived. The snow melted. The creek ran high with meltwater. The cattle grew fat on new grass. And at the entrance to the ranch, a new sign hung from the gate, carved by Jacob, painted by Grace, blessed by Father O'Brien. Mercer and Brennan Ranch, Eastern to 1887, built on truth, sustained by love. People came from all over the county to see it. Some brought gifts, food, tools, fabric for Grace's new dresses. Others brought nothing but their presence, their witness, their acknowledgement that something important had happened here. Ellie Chen came too, riding out one Sunday afternoon with news from town. "The bank is stable," she said. "First quarter profits are modest but positive. And we've approved 12 new loans, all for families Whitmore hurt." "And Marcus?" "Still running. Last report had him in California heading for Mexico." Ellie's expression was grim. "He'll surface eventually. Men like that always do. We'll be ready. I know you will." She looked at Grace playing in the yard with the Henderson children who'd come to visit. "She's different. She's healing. We all are." Ellie mounted her horse. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were just another stubborn rancher with more pride than sense. And now I think you're a stubborn rancher with more heart than sense." She smiled, a rare expression for her. "It's an improvement." She rode away. That night, Jacob sat on the porch watching the stars emerge. Grace came out wrapped in a blanket and sat beside him. "Can't sleep. Thinking." "About what?" "Everything. Mama and Papa, Uncle Silas, the trial." She was quiet for a moment. "About how different things could have been. If you hadn't been home that night. If you'd turned me away." "I never would have." "But you could have. Most people would have." "Most people never had Thomas Brennan save their life in a collapsed mine shaft." Grace leaned against his shoulder. "Do you believe in fate, that things happen for a reason?" Jacob thought about it. Really thought. "I believe in choices. The ones we make, the ones other people make. I think life is just a long chain of choices, and sometimes they line up in ways we can't predict." "So you don't think God planned all this?" "I think God gives us opportunities. What we do with them is up to us." "Then I'm glad you made the choices you did." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence. The stars wheeled overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, a lonely sound, but not a threatening one. "Papa." "Yeah. I'm happy." The words hit Jacob like a benediction. This child who'd lost everything, who'd been beaten and starved and terrorized, who'd had every reason to give up, she was happy. "I'm happy too," he said. And for the first time in 4 years he meant it. Martha called them in for bed. Grace went willingly, pausing at the door to look back. "Good night, Papa." "Good night, Grace." She disappeared inside. Jacob stayed on the porch a moment longer, breathing in the night air, feeling the peace settle over him like a blanket. He thought about the winter that had just passed, the blizzard, the desperate child on his doorstep, the battle that had followed against powerful men, corrupt systems, impossible odds. They'd won. Not easily, not cleanly, but they'd won. And now, standing in the spring darkness with his family safe inside and his land stretching out around him, Jacob Mercer finally understood what Thomas Brennan had known all along. Some things were worth protecting, some battles were worth fighting, and some promises, the ones made in darkness to dying strangers against all odds, were worth keeping. He went inside, bolted the door, and went to bed. Tomorrow, there would be work to do, cattle to tend, fences to mend, a little girl to raise, a life to build. But tonight, for the first time in years, Jacob Mercer slept without dreaming of ghosts. He slept like a man who had finally found his way home. And that, in the end, was the greatest victory of all. Because family isn't about blood. It's about the people who show up when everything falls apart, the ones who stay when staying is hard, who fight when fighting seems hopeless, who love when love seems impossible. Grace Brennan had lost her family in a tragedy that should have destroyed her. Instead, she found a new one, built on truth, sustained by love, unbreakable. And that family Jacob, Martha, Grace, and all the others who'd stood with them would endure. Through whatever storms came next, through whatever enemies emerged, through whatever the frontier threw at them. Because that's what families do. They survive. They protect, they love, and they never, ever give up.